I would like to thank our partners that extended their support to this event. Associate partners MENA Clean Energy Business Council, CETA EV Charger, who is also the panel sponsor on day one. Supporting associations: the European Association for Electromobility, Electric Drive Transportation Association, Electric Vehicle Association of Thailand. And the supporting partners: Qatar Solar Energy, FynValue, Electroheads, the Brattle Group, Rare Group, A Great E Incorporated, and our media partner, Circuit Digest.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me to this exciting event. I'm very happy to see the enthusiasm in the Middle East region and around the world to talk about the Eevee. And Jeremy from DNV has set quite a good context for me to start. So let me share my screen. So I will be talking about the EV business and regulatory considerations, specifically why and whether, first of all, EV business owners and EV car owners, whether they see a business case and economic case for their ownership and for their EV charging businesses, for example, in today's world, and how the utilities, electricity utilities and regulatory authorities regulating the electricity sectors in the countries are reacting or responding to the EV demands. This is very important even for the EV owners and EV business owners to know how the regulators and utilities are going to respond to their electricity demands, because this will influence their businesses, their behavior. At the same time, regulators and utilities will be observing and reviewing the customer behavior. So it's a very important interaction. It impacts on the business models. And this is the conclusion I will add to my presentation, that what are the business models available there, some of them, the most prevalent one. As Jeremy from DNV presented quite detailed views about how the world is reacting to the 2015 Paris Agreement on global warming. And we know that the world is falling short of achieving the required emission reduction. When you talk to the experts on the energy transition or decarbonization, they will highlight that there are 4 key measures to close the gap. The gap which is created by the current pledges by the countries. Even after the COP26 in Glasgow, we still need approximately 30% further reduction in the emissions. And the 4 key measures which are being highlighted is the massive use of renewable energy, efficient use of energy. The third one is to cut methane emissions, and we know that at COP26, more than 100 countries have committed to cut methane emissions. And the fourth one is accelerate the decarbonization in the industries which use energy extensively. And this is where the transport sector falls. And you can see on the right side the charts which show how much the transportation industry are contributing to the global energy consumption. And this context is very important because electric vehicle is the climate change solution for the transport industry. I must highlight here that EV is not only a transport industry element, it's an interaction of many industries, many technologies. And we know that companies like Tesla, who are outsiders to the transport or automotive industry originally, they are influencing and accelerating the transition towards clean energy and EV. Unfortunately, although the transport industry accounts for almost 1/3 of our energy use, the global energy use, and contributing 1/3 of the emissions, they are lagging behind other industries, particularly the electricity sector, for example, on the energy transition or decarbonization. Some countries like the US, China, Europe, particularly, as Jeremy mentioned, they have shown impressive initiatives towards decarbonization, especially on the electric vehicle, where we have seen 50% of new car sales in 2020 were EV. And these and other countries are targeting 100% of cars on the road to be electric vehicle or hybrid by 2030. I'm also aware in the Middle East region, the countries have ambitious goals on the EV. For example, UAE aims to achieve or exceed target of 20% of all cars to be EVs by 2030. Abu Dhabi has plans to go electric on our government fleet 50% by 2025. I also understand that Qatar has a vision for 2030 to go all electric on all public transit bus fleet by 2030. Now, what are the factors which are driving the EV penetration? We have seen acceleration in the EV adoption around the world. If you look back in 2020, only 10 million EVs were on the road, which is approximately 1% of all cars on the road. Another 2.6 million were added in the first half of 2021. And there are projections that by 2030, we will see 7% of all cars, or approximately 145 million cars on EVs on the road. And as Jeremy also mentioned, and we are also seeing that China and Europe are the leaders, followed by the North America. In my view, there are a number of factors which have accelerated and still continue to accelerate the EV growth in recent years. The most important one is the continuously declining cost of ownership. That is the cost to purchase fuel, repair and maintain an electric vehicle has been continuously declining. There are more choices and models for the car owners to choose from. There were approximately 370 EV models in 2020. The car EV range miles between the charging has increased significantly. This is another important factor which is addressing a big anxiety or psychological factor which car owners have. We also see improving charging infrastructure, although we are still not there. You can see on the right side that we still need millions of electric vehicle chargers around the world. There is a continuous focus on the climate change, especially the pandemic. COVID-19 has highlighted the need for the global efforts towards clean energy, and EV, as I mentioned, has a strong business case in today's world. Another important thing which is driving the EV, especially in the region, is the government policies or city policies around the world, where subsidies are being provided, rebates are being provided, either at the purchase of EV transaction or in terms of providing free parking or free charging. So there are government policies, municipality policies, which are favoring adoption of the PV. But we still see that the growth might not be as significant as you would like to see. So there are challenges which are stopping or slowing down the EV adoption from the ideal levels. The number one, in my view, as a car owner, we still see the initial purchase cost to be higher, although the overall cost of ownership, the purchase and the fuel cost together and maintenance are declining and maybe lower than the conventional cars or in internal combustion engine cars, but it's still quite high. And this is one of the factors which is preventing car owners to go for the EV. Another factor, which is in my view is no more a factor, is the range anxiety. Originally, the EV cars have limited range, miles which they can cover, can travel with the full charge. Now, The range has increased to over 400 miles, and we know that we don't travel. Majority of us don't travel every day such distances, but there is a psychological barrier which we have as the car owners when we see that we need longer charging time as compared to fueling our conventional cars, and we don't see much charging infrastructure, so we have anxiety that we will go out of fuel on the electric vehicle. These are the four most important factors which are posing challenges to the EV penetration. There are a number of surveys. I have shown here some of them, and they all highlight what are the challenges which respondents to these surveys have highlighted. And the EV charging infrastructure is the one where the businesses can find impressive opportunities. The chart I showed here shows that for the energy transition to achieve the 2015 Paris Agreement target of 1.5 degree to 2 degree Celsius above the industry levels require over 220 million chargers around the world by 2030. When we talk about the challenges to the EV adoption, many people think that when we will see higher penetration of EV cars using a lot of electricity from the power system, it will have a big impact on the power system. It is true, but the impact is not as significant as something, and it is quite manageable. There are two impacts, and I will not take a lot of time on this impact on the power system. It's a topic for tomorrow for a panel discussion we are having. But as a business owner or the EV owner, you should be aware of how the power system is going to respond. The power sector players like the utilities and regulators are seeing two key impacts from the EV penetration. One is we see that there will be increase in the peak demand, which will require higher generation capacity. Plus, we also expect that the electricity daily load curve will change because most of us, when we go home as the car owners or the EV owners, will put our cars on charge immediately when we go home. So we will see the evening demand to be more peaky. Now, this has minimal impact on the overall system. The capacity requirement or the peak demand will not increase significantly. There are studies which show that even if by 2030, 2050, we see 7% to 40% EV penetration, for example, in a European country, it will increase only 1 to 5% overall system peak demand. In the Middle East, this 1 to 5% over next 10, 20, 30 years demand increase is nothing. We see very high electricity demand growth in the Middle East, including Qatar and UAE, even going to double digits. So managing such capacity enhancement, generation capacity enhancement or transmission system is quite manageable. However, more critical is the local distribution system, where the impact will vary according to the concentration of the EV in different regions. And it could be significant in some areas, especially when the EV charging requirements will exceed the local transformer or substation capability. And this is where the significant amount of investment will be required. The impact and the investment requirement from S-curve with the EV penetration. At low EV penetration, the local distribution system and even the overall system is capable right now to take low EV penetration without significant investment or upgrades. But as the penetration increases, there will be exponential increase in the capacity requirement, and then they will plateau. So overall, the conclusion, just to make sure that the EV owners, the business owners know that the impact on the power system is not as significant as some people think. Obviously, it will vary from country to country, the penetration level, and especially on the distribution system, but it is manageable. One important factor which the regulators and the utilities are considering is the impact of these costs or investments on the final customers, including the EV chargers. Now, how the electricity utilities and regulators are responding to such impact and the EV penetration, the most important one which affects a business model for the EV charger or EV as the EV car owners is that they are thinking about changing the pricing structure, going for time of use tariff or peak demand charges, which will affect when the EV car owners will charge their cars. If they go for locational pricing, which means different pricing in different areas of the city, it will also affect the decision where to charge, at home or at office or at public places. Obviously, at the same time, the utilities, as part of the government policies, are offering discounts or rebates to promote EV. There are also other ways the power system players can manage the effect of the EV by installing, for example, battery storage as part of the local transformer unit to shave the peak, for example. From the EV owners and EV charging business owners, they can integrate with their charging station the battery and the rooftop panel to reduce their peak demand, to smooth their load profile, so that they can save on the electricity bill. Utilities should be planning in advance and highlighting, identifying the areas in the cities, in the countries where the charging stations should be located. The business owners, the EV charging stations, as well as the utilities are investing in the smart metering and the demand responses. These are more towards the topic we will discuss tomorrow. There is also a discussion about how to create further values through the vehicle to grid schemes, although many electric vehicles are not yet designed for these ones. Now, coming back to as a business model, what are the considerations or factors which are affecting currently the decisions on the business side, or even on the EV owner side? I will select some of the factors, although the supply chain, the service chain for the EV business, especially in the EV charging infrastructure, is quite a long one, providing many opportunities, whether as the owner or financier or providing certain platforms for e-mobility. But what I see, there is a vicious circle between the EV penetration and the EV charger. The EV chargers businesses are waiting for a critical mass. They want to see millions of cars in the city before they install many EV chargers. At the same time, we see that the car owners are having this psychological barrier or range anxiety. They want to see more and more chargers before they go for EV. So there is a vicious circle. How much is the critical mass? Whether we should have 100 cars, 100 EVs or 1,000 EVs per EV charger? Answer to this question is also related to, as the EV business owner, EV charger station, charging infrastructure owner, is what kind of market of customers they want to target. And this is important. Are you targeting supplying small EV chargers, for example, to the homes? You want to go for the public charging stations, or you want to strike a deal with the commercial premises, shopping malls, where you can install EV chargers? Another factor which is important for the EV charging station owners as well as the EV owners is the electricity price, how much it will cost to charge. The next decision which will affect the profitability of the business model is how to charge EV owners for the charging services, whether we should charge by hour, by time they spend at the charging station, or we should charge them according to the energy they are using. There are ways to solve some of these problems. Smart energy management, for example, optimization. I know that there are, as I see a picture at the right corner, that the charging stations can have batteries and solar integrated to optimize the energy consumption. Now, combining all of these considerations from the business model, what are the types, what are the factors, what are the considerations we have to design our business model. There are many, and I'm not trying to cover all the possibilities on the continuum spectrum of the business models, but just touching on some of the key ones. If you are an existing business owners owning a commercial premises, shopping mall, or even a small business, you can build on your existing business by installing or getting the EV chargers at your premises, so that your customers can spend more time at your premises shopping, for example. You can attract more loyal customers, and we know that EV customers, currently EV owners are a niche market. They have more disposable income, although, as I mentioned, the cost of ownership is declining significantly. But we can attract more valuable customers to our existing businesses by having the EV charging facilities. Definitely, the existing businesses can enhance their reputation of being climate change friendly or environmental friendly by adopting EV penetration, EV infrastructure. Now, as the existing model, from the pricing perspective, you have many options. You can install EV at your premises and provide the EV charging solutions free of cost to your customers. It means you will be making a loss on your charging business, but overall your business will be benefiting from the higher sales. The second option is you can only charge your customers to break even on the EV charging, only recovering your original cost of investment and energy. You can also make profit out of the charging business, and obviously you can outsource. There are companies who own and operate the EV charging station, so you can have fully funded network operator, let them charge your customers the appropriate pricing. It is also possible that as a new company, you can start your own charging infrastructure business, and which is quite scalable because it's modular in nature. You can start with one EV charger or few EV chargers. The main decisions which you have to take is to find the best location according to the traffic you see. You might have to see permission from the municipality or the commercial premises you are installing. Obviously, you have to get it installed. You have to charge or bill the customers. How you will bill them or will not bill them, depending on whether you have a deal with the premises, shopping malls or businesses. And obviously, you can scale up. The last point, again, which I mentioned briefly in the previous slide, is one of the important factor as a business in the business model is how you will charge for the EV charging, whether you will charge according to the energy used by the customer, EV car owners, or by hour, or hybrid, or no price, or discounted price. All of these things will affect the profitability, the viability of your business. This is the last slide I wanted to mention. I know I have presented a lot of details, but I will be happy to take any questions if we have the time remaining. Thank you very much for listening.